Welcome to With You Podcast,
where we explore relationships and life transitions.
I'm David.
And I'm Tara.
And we have the Bonds.
We are not alone. Today, we're welcoming special guests and friends, Adi and Ema Ban.
Thank you.
So we would like you to introduce yourselves, tell us who you are, and where you've come a long way.
We've come a long way, all the way from Oradea, Romania. And it's such a joy to be with you. Thank you for having us. And part of what we do, a good part of what we do, is relationships and premarital and marriage and family therapy and meeting with couples. So it's good. We love this company.
Yeah, and actually, we love your podcast and I mean the relationship. But then when we heard the podcast, it was like a jewel, among so many other things there, and it's great to be together with you.
And now you all have a podcast too.
Yes, that's true. It's the second year, but ours is only in Romania.
I know. I've tried listening and it sounds great. I have no idea what you're saying, but it sounds great.
Yeah, I think we need to employ AI once in a while.
That's a good idea. We could just get it translated.
That's right. So what's your podcast on?
Sufletul Familiei, it's the name of the podcast. And actually, we started with our book. So we took each chapter and we developed a series of podcast episodes for every month, one chapter. And we thought that would be probably better if we have a third person as a moderator, asking questions and, trying to do so. It will be a little bit of more dynamic.
Yeah, and the chapters of our book are mostly are intended to be read by couples who are getting ready to get married, but also the first, let's say, 4 or 5 years of marriage.
So that was pretty much the first year, and now the second year we got some of those questions that were asked during the first year. So we started
hot topics.
Yeah, hot topics.
Nice.
Yeah.
And
what's been the hottest topic?
Yeah, what's the hottest?
What have you had the most reaction to?
We have to say that communication was one of the top things, one of the most listened to episode, communication and managing conflict.
Okay.
So those were questions around that. And then also
extended family.
Yeah.
Yep.
Parents, in-laws, how little, boundaries.
When to do what.
Yeah, all those questions.
You
dealt with already.
So well.
Of course, and then kids, raising children.
Yeah.
And discipline. That's a big question that we keep getting from couples. How to handle, they read the Bible and then they say, well, how can we put that into practice in today's world? So that gets a little bit hot, and spicy.
Spicy.
And definitely technology.
Oh, yeah.
Another one.
Yeah. And that's one thing, we're all of the generation that we all are. We didn't have to deal with it quite in the same way that new parents are now.
Yeah.
Just now with our grandchildren.
Right.
Do they have phones?
Our grandchild is 7 months old.
I
So
know.
I hope she doesn't.
But they,
I hope she
they start young these days. So
Because what we've seen, even at a very early age, parents, when they want to keep them quiet, they take out the phone and there is something little moving there and probably cartoons or something like this. So, the kid is completely gone. I mean, just focus on that little screen and the cry stops, honestly. I mean, that's kind of a short-term solution.
I would have been tempted when I had 4 small children, I'm sure. So I'm glad I didn't have to deal with it in the same way.
Although we don't know what's happening neurologically. I mean, I think about development, all those fun things, but we want to talk about our
we're going to talk about the grown-up kids because we're very much in the same stage of life because you've got a married.
We've got a married one and a recently engaged.
And you've got your last one graduating from college.
Right? Yes. He's
And
also the one who's engaged. So.
Excellent. Yeah. And our last one just graduated last year. So we're kind of following the same timeline and dealing with a whole new set of challenges and new things in family life at this stage that maybe we didn't prepare for all that well.
No.
Yeah. So I'm always like, we do all four of us talk about parenting, and there was a myth, I think a myth or a lie, maybe a lie that was told to me, that parenting, you raise your kids. Healthy development as a marriage is you raise your kids until they're like 18, you send them off, and if you still like each other, that's a success. And I was like, I'm living to when they go off to college. But we found that they actually still need us. And the lie that we saw was parenting never ends. And
Correct.
And
And
no
it's
one
the same
told us.
the lie
The truth. That's the truth. The lie is we stop being parents, and our kids don't need us anymore.
And that's valid in Romania as well.
Is it
we
really?
discovered that too, that even though they are grown-ups and you think, okay, they are on their own, and that's what you worked out all those years to set them for that moment, and yet you're still
You're right. Yeah. Your parent all your life.
Yeah.
Well,
And
I think it's going to be interesting to have the conversation to see, here's what's happening in the States, what's happening in Central and Eastern Europe, because you cover most of that broad area.
Yeah, we find that there are some cultural differences, the way people expect how long a child will stay home and all of that. But I think our timeline was kind of like, okay, we just put all of our energy into our kids until 18, basically. And then they're legally an adult, they make their own decisions, and we're pretty much just like sitting home knitting.
That was me. I was sitting home knitting.
Hey. I mean, somehow that was the picture, and that's not proved to be true at all.
No, the empty nest is not a thing. I think it might be a thing, but it's more common now that people are graduating from college and coming back home. And I'm curious of what that pattern is in Romania and Eastern and Central Europe.
The culture is a bit different, because it's a culture that, if you look 50, 30, 60 years ago, are very much a rural.
You talk with your hands. That's okay.
No, I'm not. That would be funny. Thank you, dear.
It's always helpful.
Stop parenting.
It's always taking care of each other as well, so that part never ends.
So what are the cultural differences?
Cultural difference, because of that rural mentality. Family was oftentimes there were different. A series of generations living together. So you had the grandparents, the parents, and the children, even adult children marrying, and then raising the kids in the same probably household. So that was something that was very central to our culture. But lately, with all this freedom to live and travel, now you got more of the newer generation living home, going to work abroad, studying abroad, working abroad.
Or even in a different city, larger city, and not wanting to return back to the rural.
And then that was a kind of a problem when the parents were expecting that the children will stay, and at least one of them and take care of them when they are aging. So that was part of the expectation, at least my mother had, because I'm the youngest in my family. So she was somehow, okay, you'll be here for us. And when I told them that I'm planning to come to the United States for school, I told them a year ahead. So I gave them time to process, because that was a big thing. So I think that's a little bit of a difference, cultural difference. And this independence was not as much as in terms of geographical independence, as much as, you are just there building up the family and sustaining the family, the older generation, and so on and so forth. So I think that we are transitioning right now. And
that changes all the expectations, doesn't it? Because I think in our past, probably our culture used to have more multi-generational living together, but farther in the past than you. And so that independence changes the benefits for the parents and for the children, and like the grandparents helping take care of their children. And them helping take care of us.
Yeah, well, and we've seen that in terms of shifting to 2 of our 4 live with us and they're in their 20s, and there's a benefit of just seeing them develop and contribute. So it's not the same thing of parenting adult kids. So we have a live-in chef. One of our
That's a benefit.
one of our kids, our son, just loves cooking. So he works out doing hard manual labor, comes home, takes a shower, and he's like, what ingredients do we have? And then he just makes the meal for us. And so we do kind of complain a little bit of like, oh, we thought we'd be independent and just on our own. But there's also this beauty of seeing them find their things and contribute to the community, to us. I mean, I can't remember the last time I cooked. It's been a decade.
Yeah, because we did want to say, like, thinking about that being our first thing we didn't know about parenting adult children is the hard part of it's never done, realizing you're always going to be invested in them. If they're doing, if they're struggling, we're struggling.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, there's that joy, isn't there? Like, I'm sure you guys have stories about this too, of seeing them bloom and discover who they are and contribute to the world.
Yes, we definitely saw that, especially as they all left home pretty much at 18, and they traveled halfway around the world for school. And you start asking yourself, did we do right? Are we? Is it okay?
Yeah. Are they running away?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is this so? But we definitely saw them bloom. Saw them bloom here in the Wheaton College community. They were able to make great friends and friendships and lasting friendships. And even, I mean, you could see how they grew even in the decision-making process, you know, when some of the things that they either would have taken for granted before, or they would have struggled really hard, like, what do I do here? It was different because they matured and just they say, oh, this is what I can do now. And, you know, it'd be totally different because their trust in themselves and how they're handling things grew, because we were not.
And they gained confidence in just making decisions. Yeah.
One good thing about parenting adult kids, in our case, sons.
Yeah.
That was the only recipe we had. Was that you saw how by the time they are starting to mature more, and learning from experiences, in coming back and saying, I want to talk to you about this issue, you know, and then you feel like, oh, I'm still the parent. They still call me dad. And yet they want me to be part of some decision-making process there. And that kind of feels like more of a partnership, like, you know, companionship in a sense, you know, friendship. And that it's a different level, because what young couples ask us today in Romania, in Europe, how can I become friends to my child or to my children? And our question is, how old is you? Well, he's 3. You're like,
too soon.
You know, now he needs you as a father, as a mother, and when he's 23, then we talk about friendship more than this. But people are kind of they want it somehow backwards to do the whole process. So for me and for us, that was something that we look, you know, it was like a reward
in a sense,
seeing them calling us and inviting us into their decision process.
Well, you have a natural understanding of the research, because there's a guy named Frank Furstenberg that did a study in looking at when around teenagers, and when teenagers are early teens, they need the parents to be very structured, and there's a low amount of independence or autonomy. But then over time, it should be an inverse relationship. The autonomy increases, so they should, like 15, 16, have a say in how the rules are implemented, or have a say. So it starts to shift. So it sounds like that was a really interesting study to see that helps adolescents develop. And then when we're dealing with adult kids, I think about how they're coming back to you and seeing you as having a resource. Do you ever do the other way around and like, oh, my sons have these skill sets, and there's a consultation the other way that it's still a parent-child relationship, but there's a mutual, like, man, they can contribute in a different way.
That's
Yeah,
right.
we definitely do.
And yeah, we've seen this. I mean, I tried very hard to keep up, especially in technology with them, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at one point
hard.
I switched from Android into Apple.
Yeah.
And just because, you know, they
Everyone
were,
said it.
yeah, and we're like, okay, it's a different, you know, setup, and I don't understand it. But I switched, and one of our sons who was still at home, when he saw my iPhone, you know, the brand new iPhone I brought, said, "Oh, is that for me?" And I go like, "Not yet, son. You know, this is for me." No way, Dad. Are you switching to this? So that was an interesting, you know, I think it kind of shocked him a bit that,
Yeah.
you know, his father is trying to pursue that. But again,
Thought of some
yeah,
things.
going back to them and saying, hey, how are you doing? I mean, show me,
Yeah.
because you are ahead of me. And that also creates that powerful relationship of give and take.
Yeah.
And the other thing that comes to mind is also that growing up, you know, just like you, we were in the business of counseling people. So they heard us talking about people in the talking to each other about, so we're meeting them and we're wondering what would be the best questions to ask and how to help them. And then they heard us and saw us walking through life with quite a few couples. And so about 3 years ago, we're driving with them, and one of our sons chose to follow in our footsteps and go into this counseling field and psychology counseling field. And we're sharing with them that we're not exactly sure what's in our future. And so he pauses and looks at us and says, "So where do you see yourselves in the next 2-3 years? And what are some things?" And we went like,
Can I stop the car? Can I park here? Can I get the water fresh? You know,
but he really helped us process a few things, you know? So yeah.
That's amazing.
So cool.
When it turns around like
Yeah,
that and
yeah.
you feel like, wow, all that stuff that we did, not even intentionally
No.
trying to teach them, when it comes back, that is part of the rewarding part of seeing it come back, especially in a beneficial way. Because we see lots of things come back that we are a little bit ashamed we taught them accidentally sometimes. There's that too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I love that you were speaking into that new role as they become adults, is sort of moves from that solving their problems and more of a supportive role. And I think that's something a lot of people, including us, struggle with as that shifts into, where do we balance intrusion? Where does it become intrusion versus invitation? You know, supporting versus solving. That's a tricky thing that I think
we have different measurements of where that should be. I don't know, maybe you guys are uniform in when helping the kids, but we that's some of the arguments we have having adult kids is how do we say something or do we shut up?
I call it the speak up versus shut up. Like
right. Sometimes we just use the sign, you know, like
sometimes, sometimes you feel like you need to speak up even if they don't invite you to, because it might help them avoid a really bigger problem. But sometimes they need to make their own decision, even if it leads to a mistake.
Tara's very, very gentle. She doesn't say shut up or zip it. She goes, "David, don't you want to go outside and go take a walk?" And I'm like, "Oh, yep, I do want to go take a walk," because I'm leaning into like, "That's stupid. Why are you making that decision?" And she's like, "I think, hey, why don't you?" And I'm like, God blessed me with this, because it's gentle enough that I'm not like, then we start fighting. But it's kind of like, oh yeah,
we'll process this later.
Yeah, I will take a walk now. But it's like, how do you guys cue each other, and how do you know when to be helpful and when it's intrusive and not, and kind of beyond what your parental responsibilities are with an adult?
I think we also learn and develop a bit of the eye contact between the two of us.
Yeah.
You know, and
but we have to admit It's not easy, and we're not done yet. We have not arrived.
Right.
So
That's the hard part of this
still learning.
conversation because we're right in the
Yeah.
middle of it. We haven't figured this out yet.
And they will listen to this.
Yeah.
That's right.
So children, we're
kids.
sorry. We're doing the best we can.
Write us a note in the comments.
Yeah.
Or don't.
If there's no comments, we know what that means.
Yeah.
Well, just going to the process of a wedding, for example, and then I mean even choosing school and majors and decisions like
Yes.
that. And sometimes we felt like, okay, this is not a good idea, you know.
Right.
How can we tell them? And I think for us, what was hard to decide when to start talking.
Mm.
As you said, I am more into, you know, I'll let you know.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, come on, I have to, you know.
That's right. It's my job
Otherwise
as a dad.
Yeah, and it burns me then. You know, I'm living with this heavy burden. But and Emma, I mean, she was helping me in the process, and there were times when I kind of just put my hand on her shoulder and you know, kind of send a message. You know, like, yeah, it's good if we just calm down a bit and let this process. But that's the hard part: when to talk and when to pray.
Yeah.
And what we learn about this is that rather than, if we don't feel like it's the right time to say something, then we'll find a moment when the two of us just pray.
Yeah.
Pray for that specific situation, pray for them, and say, Lord, you know it all. You know, if it's something that we should say, bring that opportunity.
Just a few months ago, one of our sons shared that he wanted to visit a country, and we were not sure that's the best country to visit
Mhm.
in this time,
Yeah.
in the history of our world, how it is right now. But we both felt we shouldn't say anything. I was so like, are you
You know,
sure?
like that car that you push the
clutch. Yeah.
and it goes like that.
And then back in my mind, the same thing. No, just
That's okay.
Yeah. That's
no, just pray. No, just pray. He's
Yeah.
old enough. He's mature. You've seen it. You've seen him make some good choices. He's not just jumping into this thing, but it was not easy. But we definitely prayed. So in the end, the Lord really prevented him from going there. But it was
wasn't
not
easy.
easy. It wasn't
enough.
Yeah.
And then we kind of almost congratulated ourselves of being quiet on
Yes.
that subject and
Yeah.
not saying anything. Because
I was wondering-
sometimes I think it's almost like, oh, so you think it's not a good idea.
Okay.
That makes me think that probably it is a good idea.
Yeah.
Just because I'm young and I'm, you know,
pushing forward. I think about it. We're
Sorry, this is
just
why
having a
we're
little.
having a technical difficulty. Good.
I think it's interesting because like most of our challenges as a parent is when we haven't prepared for whatever's coming up and we have to react in the moment. And as we talked about this, it's really kind of working with our kids in calm moments of, we want to be a support. We're with you in this. We're still your parents, but we will wait until there's an invitation to participate rather than offering it up, which is hard because then that means you have to take some initiative and reach out. And there's times when I don't trust my kids will do that. Right. And it's a trust issue for me of, and I think about my relationship with God. So you go to the spiritual discipline of praying. I think about, how is God in the silence in wanting me to turn towards him? How is this a metaphor for my spiritual walk with God the Father in terms
What great
of,
image.
right. And it frees me up and then it's like, oh, I get it. And so actually this challenge, this struggle invites me into experiencing God in a different way. I still fail miserably at times, but it's like we tried to have those like, hey, reach out to us, talk to us. I'm trying to think of a story where that's happened. That's not too recent.
Yeah, well, you say when it happens without warning, it pretty much always happens without any warning.
True. Yeah.
They bring something up and you're kind of in the moment. How do you react? And I think we all go straight to wanting to help and solve and sort it out. And sometimes we'll start to go down that path first and we see that they're reacting in a way that's saying this is not helpful because we're trying to put in our opinion or our advice or our past experience. And sometimes we'll just stop and go, oh, wait, did you just want us to listen? You just need to just pour this out. We won't say anything, and actually just put that out there. And sometimes they'll go, yep, that would be great. Just let me discuss it, and you don't need to say anything, and we just be the safe place.
Definitely Andy's wedding comes to mind. And I have to say Andy, because by now everybody knows he's the only one who's married. But, even if I say one of our sons.
That's right.
No, anonymity.
Yeah.
But so this was about 3 weeks before the wedding, and it wasn't an argument, but I was trying to get more things out of him over a particular thing. I'm not sure if it was the wedding venue or something. And I'm asking, and at one point he looks at me and says, Mom, it's the first time I'm doing this. It's the first time I'm getting married. And I want this to be the last time I do it. So, Mom, if I'm making mistakes, just bear with me. And I'm just,
That was
beautiful.
I shouldn't have done
Yeah,
that.
I'm like, it's my first time being a mother of a groom too.
Yeah, but
So can there be grace all around? Like, we're trying to
was,
this.
but I just felt
Yeah.
like you were saying,
Yeah.
so do you want me just to listen to you? And so that would have been so much better than grueling him with questions. So
Yes, and I think that's one we get a lot of questions about, is that whole, when your family expands and there's new people coming in, and weddings definitely heighten all of these things because there's so much at stake, and there's so much symbolism, and there's just adding in new traditions and things. So we could do a whole other podcast on advice for the parents of the bride and the groom, because we learn a lot about just showing up and letting people make decisions that we'll support, even if we would have done it a different way.
yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
And it's not the actual outcome that's important. I think parenting adult kids, it's the process and what we're modeling. So I think about how I am caring for my parents. It's my care and love for my parents as an adult child of adult parents, and the mutual and kind of self-caring. I'm like, well, how I navigate this is a model for how I want my relationship and Tara's relationship with our kids to be doing that. But a lot of times in the moment, the content becomes so pressure filled that I forget all about the process and what I'm modeling, and I go for the win. Like, we're a little competitive. I don't know about you all.
A little. Sometimes I say, did you have to win again?
Yeah.
Over the boys.
I don't think parenting is supposed to be a competitive sport,
Yeah.
but it feels that way.
Well, yeah.
It's supposed to be a team sport, Adi.
Actually, when our sons we were younger and in the home, and we're having different board games and stuff like this. So I always went, what are the rules?
Yeah.
And then you play by the rules, and the best wins.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So
In
that
many cases.
yeah. So for a while I was the champion, but then they
Dethrone the
Oh,
champions. Yeah.
Especially FIFA.
But then Emma was like, no, this is not fair. So she came up with her set of rules that pretty much everyone wins. Okay.
Yeah.
So
But they didn't learn. So because you were saying once that sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. So
That's right.
yeah,
That's right.
I should have heard that while I
Dan
was
didn't experience it as a lot of learning.
yeah, but
well with him. Yeah.
so what happened? We would say, okay, let's play again. And then the boys would just say, which rules do we?
Whose rules?
And if it was mom, they would just be relaxed, like, okay, whatever, we all win,
Yeah.
when it would be my rules, then they would be like, okay, now let's see.
Let's count.
Yeah.
In all fairness, Catan was just their game. I never played, so they played just on their own. Their own competitiveness came out.
We're learning. We're not game. We like cards, but we haven't played a lot of games. But our son Zachary, the podcast helper and producer, he's a big gamer, and they like board games. But most of their games are collaborative board games now. There's games where the task is for the group to do something, and you win or lose as a group, which. There was no such thing when we were growing up. It was Monopoly about like how do we
Your
Monopoly, wipe everything.
yeah Yes, good capitalism,
white thing.
right? Like,
Yeah.
let's just take all the money.
Yeah.
But there's now these games, and it's really kind of made me think of like, oh, that's parenting adult kids. Is how are we having a cooperative game where we have the desired relational outcome, and how do we do this together? Because I think culturally, the personality of the kids, the personality of the parents, it's going to look different. The game's going to take a different shape each time. So like how you all do it, how we do it might not be the same, but are we having that cooperative kind of mentality towards a relational outcome, not so much the decision that they make? I mean, this is theory and it's great in theory. I think it's hard. It's a hard game to play.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Well, the
You
school
have to allow
in,
for space. For
the
people
school in
to-
Romania also
Mhm.
was very competitive.
Yeah.
So in the school, you were actually somehow shaped and taught that
Yeah.
everything is a competition. So you don't give up. You
And the
just,
more information you know, the better it is
yeah,
for you.
I mean,
'cause
being
there's
the first,
very
being the best, being
information
there.
content
So
oriented.
that kind of shaped a
How
lot
you
of
think.
generations in just fighting. And that's why sometimes when Romanians go abroad, they will try to be the best there, learn whatever is to be learned, and just fight for this because it comes with this mindset.
Romanians, I think maybe Eastern Europeans too. You
Yeah.
know, it's this fight. I have to show who I am, that I'm good at this, that I can be the best, and that I can be top. So yeah.
And oftentimes they will do that, in just for them to prove in that society,
Yeah.
and yet they will forget the family.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
working, you're finding the best job, being the best there, earning, and then pouring yourself into that career situation and whatever, but forgetting the family.
Yeah. Or leaving the family.
So yeah, that's another side effect of our
Drive.
and our legacy from the past.
Yeah.
At times.
Well, and it does shape us, right? I mean, our birth order shapes us.
Yes.
We've talked a lot about, I grew up in a very small community. Tara is a global child.
Yes.
Yeah, but all those
Shapes
ways
us.
we're shaped comes into how then we navigate in our family system.
Yes.
And we're definitely not strangers to competition in the American culture either, the trying to win. And then how does that work? It's one of the things that we thought of that nobody told us about parenting adult children was that we thought it's going to get simpler and simpler. The children get older, they're going to go, and we're just going to be, life will get simpler because they're taking care of themselves. In reality, it gets more complex, doesn't it? In a lot of ways, because you add more members if they have partners or they get married. You're also bringing in new, their in-laws are part of the system.
Right.
We're navigating holidays and family gatherings in different ways because they've all got their own nuclear families now.
And family
Separate.
vacations.
Yeah. Yeah. So a complexity that you don't want to have that competitive spirit. We don't want to be fighting with our son's in-laws for who gets who when. And so working on that collaboration between lots of systems is kind of a new learning curve.
Indeed it is.
Well,
Yeah.
even as you say that, it's kind of like for our perspective, it's centered on us as mom and dad, husband and wife.
Mhm.
That okay, how are we navigating that? But there's lots of different centers, right? Like
Yeah.
even how you said that of how do we not get competitive, as if it's about us and it's
Right.
about the kids and their two sets of parents,
Yeah,
and how they're
exactly.
navigating that.
I remember I was a child, and I remember how my mother would, talking to other people, would say something like this: small children, small problems. Older children, big children, bigger problems.
Bigger
Problems.
problems. Yeah.
I had no idea what she was talking.
No, no.
Yeah.
But because my older brother is much older than me, it's almost 15 years older than me, and then we have a sister between the two of us. They were already there when I was still a kid and getting married and starting family and so on and so forth. So hearing my mother say that, I had no clue at the time. But I remember when I got married and then I started family and having kids, thinking through that, how is this going to unfold for us?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So And one of the things I think we were forced to learn is when do you start giving more autonomy to kids, let them be,
like you were saying earlier, finding that
and then
The release.
when
Yeah.
and when do you intervene, and then when do you just say, hey, ask me, call me if you want me. But I have another question for you, because we just went through this recently. Would your children expect the home to stay the same?
your home, like
Well, this is one of the children's bedrooms. That is now a podcast studio. So the answer is, I don't know what they would expect, but
They know that our home has always been multi-use space, and if they don't occupy it, it's going to become something else. But we do try to make space for them to come back. We've created a guest space in the basement so that when our children come back who live out of town, there's a place that they can feel comfortable. That's our hope. But
because that's one of the things we recently again found out, was that somehow, we went through a process of remodeling, and some of the remodeling of our home meant some of the spaces really were reshaped. And so, when one of our sons came home with the son for the first time to see, now he saw the process, but this was the first time when most of it was sort of done. And he was with some really good friends, and he was saying, this is not the home I grew up in. He said, somehow they should expect that. So nobody told us that sometimes some kids expect the home to stay the same. Like, the bread is there, the microwave is there, the fridge is there,
But isn't that a pull? Like, not just space, but like us as parents, the expectation of, I know I go back home and I kind of become a 16-year-old boy again when I go back to my parents. So when my brother comes into town and we all go, Tar's like, what has happened to you?
You guys both behave like your teenage self.
Yeah, it's not the physical space, but we step into the relationship like it's frozen in time. And so, I'm 56 and have a granddaughter, but I'm like, Dad, can I borrow the car? Right? And I'm like, what? I'm asking to borrow. I have my own car. But yet we step back, and I think it's hard to transition, whether it's physical space, relational space. It's hard to transition for us as parents to shift to that collaborative thing. I think it's hard. I know it's hard for me as an adult child to really hold my complete identity as I am now when I'm with my parents, because it's like, well, that's kind of the role I'm used to playing. And so I'm this little delinquent teenage boy. And it's hard to hold the professional grandfather role when I'm in that space.
I think all of us have a little nostalgia for the way, the way that we remember it being. And so I think the kids hold on to a bit of that memory of what home was to them and the time that they really remember growing up. I see our kids, we haven't moved homes or changed all that much, but I'll see sometimes I'll bring out an old set of plates that I had a long time ago, I find in the attic, and I bring it out, and like our daughter reacted like, that's my childhood. And it's like, I
we're like, and we're not taking it to Goodwill. I guess it's going to go back into storage.
They have attachments to things, memories that we're not aware of.
No.
And I think it's similar for us. We hold on to things of theirs from when they were a child and have memories built around what we were trying to create for them. And I just think parenting at any stage, don't you think it's holding joy and holding sorrow or grief at the same time all the time?
In Romania, there's this saying similar to the metaphor you just brought up, or what you just said, that one eye is crying and the other eye is laughing or happy.
I love that. You'll have to teach us that in Romanian sometime, because it's
un ochi râde, one eye laughs, un ochi plânge, the other eye cries. So, but it's the same, like you were saying.
But it helps us to think that that's normal and true all the time. that we can hold both, because
Yes.
we try to shoot for everything being happy or everything being good for everybody. And for parents, we often say, I think we say, for especially for mothers, you're only as happy as your saddest child, because you just want everybody to be doing well. But I think if we just know that it's normal to feel grief at the things that go away, like they're not the child that they were, or some things pass and other things are becoming, and we can hold all of that. But we still have to allow for the grief
We have to.
of the
Yeah, and
things that are behind
that's
us.
not easy to some.
Sometimes you have to dose it, or just break it in smaller pieces in order to be able to carry it with you. But again, what I was hearing you, David, saying you become that 16-year-old, but that means you feel at home. That was a time where you felt good
In the home.
in the home, and you felt like accepted and loved and everything.
Yeah.
And I think there's that part of us where we just want to go back and re-experience.
Right. I don't want to be an adult anymore. You nailed me. Let me be a delinquent without any responsibility.
That was the only thing, is you still have a home to go. I don't. So I cannot, be a 16-year-old anymore.
You can come here and be a 16-year-old.
Yeah, you want your mom to just come out and ring the bell when it's time for dinner.
Yeah, and you come in and no responsibilities. There is a little bit of fantasy, but I think about the home being that way. I think it's kind of like, the comfort and
the memories,
and why it's hard parenting adult kids and adult children, because it's just like there's this implicit message of, well, we're so excited you're home, we're gonna spoil you, and then we get upset of like, well, can't you at least bring the dishes into the sink, right? Like, you're a grown man, and so there's mixed messages we send. It's just like, oh, we're glad you're here and you're a child,
but also please pick up your stuff.
Right. and that's a growing edge for us of sliding into that old roles too, and then feeling resentment because we're living in two historical periods. We're living in the past and the present, and it's a challenge.
Probably we should ask your parents, guys, how do they feel when they see you coming home?
We're not, hi moms and dads, we're not letting you on the podcast ever.
That would be too many.
It's too vulnerable. It would be great, and I don't think I can tolerate it.
And it's not really the same, because both of his parents are still alive, and my mom lives next door, but their homes have changed drastically since we were children.
I went out to college, and then they moved and didn't tell me, changed lots, and didn't tell me where they were going. No, that's not true. That's not true.
But yes, so there's not the same sort of sense of memories that are held in their spaces anymore.
For them it was, so.
But it is, I think it speaks to the other piece of having adult children. If you still have adult parents, we're in the midst of a shift of, we're trying to figure out how to navigate life responsibly as adult parents with adult kids, and kind of shift there. But there's almost another shift of, as our parents age or die and they're widowed, of what's our responsibility. So back to your kind of example in Romania of multi-generational living in the home, that was just natural, and you all lived and navigated that. Here there's space, and probably generationally now there's people living all over the space. How are you shifting to, we are having adult kids and having to kind of have more say into our parents and caring for them? How do we navigate this, Emma?
It was not easy. So I'm of two of us, I'm the only one doing both. I am closer. I'm the closest of my siblings to my aging mom. She turned 90 at the end of last year, and she lives in a home for the elderly, just about 15 minutes from where we live. So, but at one point in time, when the boys were still home, I was sort of caught between, taking care of my parents and having to handle teenagers in the home and kids living. So I have to say, it's not easy, and I didn't do it very well each time. But yeah, as you were talking, I had to be mindful that my children see me and I'm their model
That's
of
right.
how they're going to
That's right.
handle not only us, but their in-laws or other elderly that they're growing. So I tried to do my best when I would make a mistake in front of them to explain this is the context or this is what. So I would, say the same. If you are handling aging parents, know that if you make mistakes, you can go to your children and say, listen, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have talked to my mom that way. And yeah, the boys heard me once. I was really frustrated and I was trying to tell my mom there's only one way to do it, and this is the way, unfortunately. And it was in front of them, and it was just like, ugh. So when I was at home with the boys, I said, I'm so sorry, boys, but yeah.
I think
Respect
that's a
comes
great
in.
example of what you just said, because I think as the older our children get, the more they can tolerate us not being perfect. They understand very well that we're not perfect.
They know
They
all
tell
our
us that.
flaws.
Yeah.
But it's so good to model
Yeah.
that, as asking for forgiveness or saying I made a mistake there and this is what was going on, because we're asking them to be that way and to be able to admit when they make mistakes. And the modeling is so much more powerful than the telling them how to do things.
Definitely.
But it's hard for us because it feels like there's so much responsibility anyways. And now our behavior is really a part of what our children are, a huge part of what our children are watching.
Mm-hmm.
And even thinking
Yeah.
about so my folks planned ahead and they got into a 55 and over community that and selling
Now we
home.
qualify for.
Right. Well, on my 55th birthday, mom's like, you can move in next door. And I was just like,
I was waiting for it.
I'm not quite ready for retirement. But it was a gift of decluttering and I know your mom's doing that too, of kind of organizing life as an act and a gift to us as adult kids in helping navigate endings well and this space well. And so thinking of at lunch, we started to lean in. We didn't have the full conversation. We started to lean in of how are we planning for
We were
our
talking about our parents, and we said, you know what? It's
That's
probably
us.
time to start thinking about
and how are we
being
going
mindful.
to gift our children having a plan rather than just putting it all on adult children.
Yeah.
And, if you want to spiritualize it, you'll
Yeah.
say you'll leave this to the grace of God, so he will plan it for you.
Yeah. But he gave us two hands and a head.
I
so,
know.
you know.
I'm just throwing something there,
Yes.
more spiritual side,
Yeah.
being so faithful that God is going to provide. And I think this is what we saw probably 15 years ago when in her parents, and we were trying to talk to them and saying, okay, how do you plan? Because we were at one point saying maybe it would be good if we both of our families will move together so they'll be closer to us and we can watch them, especially because her father had heart disease and diabetes and there were some issues there, and they were like,
No, we don't want to move. We want to stay in our home. So definitely one good lesson for us then was you don't plan these things when you're over 70. You plan them now.
Yeah.
55, 54, almost 60. It's a good time to start planning.
Yeah.
It's not, it's not too early.
Why do you think it's hard for people? Why do we avoid it, or why
in
do
your
we
mind
do it?
you are still young.
I'm 16.
That's right.
Honestly, I can.
23.
The only thing is, I'm just, my knee hurts, so now that brings me back to more reality
Yeah.
that I am not 30 anymore,
Yeah.
or things like this. But I think it's hard to accept oftentimes that we are aging.
Yeah.
And I don't
We are
think we
going
have
there.
models either. I don't think we have. You now have models, but
Yeah.
we in the Romanian context, Central European context,
No planning like this.
no, not yet. So
Yeah.
I think our generation will probably be your parents.
You're having
Yeah.
family patterns. And,
Yeah.
Which is hard to
It
break
is.
patterns and do something that hasn't been modeled for you.
Living work is hard.
It is
And
hard.
we saw this with us moving
Other
from
things.
US to Romania after 10 years, and then seeing that, everything what we wanted to do, people were so resisting, and because they're not ready to accept. And that pioneering work it takes a lot of energy and focus, and sometimes,
But this is more personal, so I think this is easier to do because you definitely see, I don't want to get there. I don't want to get to 80 and I have a house full of stuff
Yeah.
that I don't want to give to my kids
Yeah.
because it's just stuff that
It's a
means
burden.
something to me, but not to them.
Yeah.
well,
Yeah,
you
so-
can see it also as a revenge for something.
Yeah. We don't want to have that revolving slate
No,
of
no.
pain down through the
But
generations.
sometimes feels good just thinking about it. I have to be
That's
honest.
honest. That's
Yeah.
honest. I also think it's probably a fear of thinking about our mortality, even
Yes.
though we have faith in Jesus and we have a promise of something on the other side. We still cling to life in an interesting way that doesn't always match up to our beliefs. I mean, I grew up as a mortician's son, so I have a weird relationship with death. Like death has been around me all the time, but I think for a lot of people, it's like if we start planning, there's an acknowledgement that there's an ending. There's an acknowledgement of our finiteness.
You're gonna smile, but we also see now more and more people. You're gonna smile in a sneaky way, but we see people like 20 years ahead of us, so they're into their 70s, and retirement is nowhere on their list. And it's basically because somehow we have this idea that once I retire, I die the next day, or who knows, or people are just not gonna want me anymore, and I'm not gonna be needed anymore. So we see another resistance in our culture as far as even retirement, not to even go into pre-plan.
Get a lot of satisfaction from meaningful work.
Exactly.
And I think that's probably ties into the whole parenting thing too, because a lot of us, I mean, for a lot of years, we've poured a lot of our energy into raising our children. And so it's a big shift when they need us less. And so it's a new, way of looking around at the world and what can I contribute now if my children don't need me all the time? Which leads me to another question too, because our relationship as a couple changes also because just the whole balance in the house changes. So what are some things you guys have found that's helped you stay connected in this stressful time, and transitioning kids out of the house and the shifting of needs?
I think one of the things that helped us was that during
As they
the
were
process of raising kids, we kept investing in our relationship as husband and wife. And that was
Especially
like
the
more,
dates.
like
The dates.
this
Dating, yeah.
financial advice and saying, start saving early, a little bit, and that will really grow into a better retirement fund. I think for some reason God gave us His grace in doing that, and it was little bits of investment in the relationship. So by the time this,
as when the kids were really young.
And what does that look like? The investment in the relationship. What do you mean? What were you
like
doing?
being able to spend time together, talking, praying every
Intentional.
day together. And that was something that was intentional. No, we don't go to bed without having a prayer time together as a husband and wife. And then having time when we just go away, and even if we would just be for 2 hours somewhere,
But just
quiet,
the two of us.
yeah, no work, no phones, no kids, no nothing, and just focus on each other. Those things. And my job, because I was also working besides ministry, was every time I had I needed to go somewhere, almost every time I made sure that I included Emma, or many
For
times.
like 2-3 days or 3-4
So
days.
I would do my thing for the work, but then I would have the afternoon, the
Spend time
evenings,
together.
spending time with her. So I think those were the things that helped us stay together, tied together, praying together, fighting together. All that wonderful, thing.
Yeah.
And then when this happened, when kids started to leave. I mean,
We had
I was
something.
Yeah,
it wasn't
because I
like,
see
who are
that
you?
rift happens
Yeah.
where you
Yeah.
just get sort of parallel and you feel
Yeah.
like roommates or business partners,
Yeah.
and that connection can.
And probably one of the
weekend.
things that was also helpful is that we got more and more involved in this family ministry.
Yeah,
We
together.
did it together. So that kind of brought us together, and all the premarital and the young couples fellowship and everything else. And that,
And reading materials together and continued learning together.
Yeah.
That's been so helpful.
and we also had some mentors. I mean,
Yeah.
at least one couple, David and Claudia Arp, that would, once in a while we'll call and talk or meet.
And they
face to
say,
face.
how are you doing? Are you doing that? What are you
That's
doing
so
to
good.
invest in your relationship?
And they were one generation ahead of us.
Yes.
So they knew some of the things that we were facing. So they were able to at least address the right questions
Yeah.
in order for us to come up with our
Yeah.
answers.
Pay
Yeah,
attention.
that's so good.
So, yeah.
Well, we want to make sure. I know we had us both asked lists, any kind of last things that we didn't cover
Do you
on
want
your
to? Do you want to
list.
say how we've answered that question for us?
Yes.
We
Uh,
probably don't
what-
even know the
what-
same thing. I know.
Like,
Wait, what?
this is so we have a podcast, so we're able to talk to each other once a
Yeah.
week.
Well, I'll say one just quick small change for us was it
We have
moved
them all.
from evening. We didn't do a whole lot of evening date
Dates.
nights, partly because he would teach a lot in the
Do
evenings.
therapy.
But when the children got older, we shifted to the way we could connect best was going for breakfast after the children left for school, or anyone in our neighborhood knows we take long walks together. So you'll see it. They'll see us out in the neighborhood, and that's the only time you can talk away from all the ears in the house. Yeah.
Well, and during COVID, so there was a time when we'd walk, and that's what we could do. And then I got a text from a friend because I grew this during COVID. I'm like,
Your beard.
my
those
beard,
who
for
are
those that
audio.
are listening, I grew a beard, and I got a text from a friend going, David, I'm worried because I think Tara is cheating on you.
They didn't say those words. They said, "Who's Tara on a walk?"
Tara's walking with a bearded guy, and I'm like, I have really good friends, and I was like, tell me about him.
Was he really handsome?
Was he super handsome? And they're like, oh, it was you. But it also was family ministry of like, Tara and I have interesting careers, but we've really worked on this next stage of life of how are we putting them together. So kind of joking about the podcast being the place where we talk, but it was how are we going to do our focus on relationship, marriage, doula, training the next generation of mental health and medical professionals. How do we dovetail that together?
Because parenting was our shared purpose,
Right.
for so many years. So I think that's where a lot of people get into this drifting when that moves away from.
Or holding on to your kids in
Yeah, because
unhealthy
you
ways.
need that.
of,
Right. And you're holding on to it because that was
Yeah.
your whole thing. So we really intentionally looked ahead to, okay, when we go into this next phase, what's going to be our shared purpose and something that's fulfilling for me that's not them. So I'm not putting all my hopes and
into
desires and energy into them when they need to be moving away from the nest. Yeah.
And it's been amazing because I've gotten to see Tara develop in ways. The first 30 years of our marriage was different in terms of her command of a room, her ability to teach and speak, and her comfort in doing that. And she continues to surprise me every
Because you've
every
been my
day.
biggest cheerleader, honestly. Like I think that is what other parents need to know. We need to be each other's biggest
I agree.
supporters.
Amen. Yep.
Yeah.
Or else, yeah.
So these are some of the ideas that we have about how to parent adult children. And it's really more about how do we work on our relational stance than
Yes.
anything about parenting, but it's having friendship, being open to our kids influencing us, not just a one directional, but a multi-directional kind of thing. And don't forget each other. So we're so glad that you came to talk with us. We learn
Thank
something
you.
we learn something every time we sit down with
Same
you.
here. So yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's amazing that you would fly all the way to Romania just to be in person on our podcast.
Happy graduation.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
congratulations on your new family member.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you
you
so
very
much.
much. And keep up with your podcast and the ministry, because it's really a good thing. So, and then
We enjoy it, and we know
Thank you.
lots of friends in Romania who do. So
Well,
yeah,
thank
and
you.
more of
you.
the younger generation
Yes.
understands English.
yes, yeah.
So
So it's
that's
easy for
that's
them
easy
to
for
listen.
them to listen.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.